Moonshine Jesus, God in the sky. Moonshine Jesus, God in the ride. Moonshine Jesus, why you ride? Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine?
It's a show. We are very glad to have you here with us. I'm here with my good buddy Caleb. How's it going, Caleb?
It's great, Mark. We get to be together in person. That never happens.
That never happens. He's from the West Coast. I'm from here in North Carolina. It's very odd to be doing the podcast and actually like seeing him not on a monitor. It is odd. Today we're going to be talking about
San Diego.
He's from San Diego. Yes. So
don't you feel sorry for me?
Yeah. I feel very sad for him. Not really. But we're going to be talking about Thor, Love and Thunder today. I also want to welcome our special guest also from North Carolina. This is Bubba Big Bump. Playing our theme music for us throughout the show, make him feel welcome. We're fortunate to have him. I know him all the way back from the days when he was Big Bump and Loki. And then now he has his own band, Bump and the Stun Guns.
Big Bump and the Stun Guns since 1985.
Absolutely. So if you hear about them, be sure to check them out, Google them, all of that good stuff. At Facebook, that's where they live on their Facebook page. So go see them there. We are sponsored by progressivechristianity.org. And we encourage you to go and check them out there. We have over 6,600 pieces of resources for progressive Christians
That's
there.
Incredible.
Liturgies, essays, all kinds of different things. So we encourage you to go check us out there. Also, check the Moonshine Jesus show out. We're on Facebook. We'd love to have you follow us on the Facebook page. Also, everywhere you get your podcast, you can sign up for the Moonshine Jesus show. We appreciate it. Quick notes on the format of the show. We're going to geek out for a few minutes on watching Thor. And so this is not spoiler free. You're going to hear stuff that you may not want to hear if you haven't seen the show. But we'll be doing that. Then we'll quickly turn into more of a theological, political kind of discussion of things that we pulled out of the movie. And then the final segment, and this is where we're going to want you to participate. It's usually called Make Me Look Stupid, where we try to make each other look stupid.
Yeah.
With a question that we don't think the other person can answer. Well, we're going to reverse it and let you make us look stupid.
Yeah.
So
and they'll succeed.
And you will.
Yeah,
we promise you're going to do well at this. Yeah, you're going to do very well at this. But we encourage you to listen throughout the show and see what questions it might bring up. We do ask that the questions still relate to Thor, God of Thunder, and the political, theological, and there's probably more theological stuff that we bring up as well. That said, I do want to mention for that part as well, everyone who asks a question, we have some Shine Jesus Shine t-shirts in various sizes, and we'll invite you to take one of those in exchange for your questions. So we appreciate that. We might have some opportunities to give them away other than that as well.
I bet we will. Yeah. I bet we will.
Absolutely.
And you all are drinking something today. This is called the Hammer of Thor, and it is vodka, cranberry juice, and lager. So we always have a themed cocktail with whatever we are talking about. And this is the first time Mark and I have ever been drinking the same thing.
Absolutely.
And in a Moonshine Jesus show jug, no less. So
we usually surprise each other, but it made a lot of sense that we're together for the first time, have the same drink, and to share it with our friends who showed up. So cheers, everybody. Here's to a good show.
Woo!
Take it away.
All right. Moonshine Jesus, shine the side. Moonshine Jesus, love and ride. Moonshine Jesus, shine light. Moonshine Jesus, won't shine light.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. If you do decide that you want a cocktail and you're coming in late, there are cocktails over here. There's beer in the cooler, and there are little koozies if you would like those as well. So, Mark, you and I are big Marvel fans, I know.
Probably a little too big.
Are you all Marvel
for myself,
fans?
I am big.
Anyone?
I'm
Kinda. Come on. Some Marvel fans. Well, we are.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so one of the joys of our lives is getting to watch superhero movies, drink, and talk about theology and politics.
Right.
So we're going to move into theology and politics in a few minutes, but we want to geek out a little bit about this new superhero movie as we drink and talk about them. So this is not a spoiler-free zone, as Mark reminded us. And today we are talking about Thor, Love and Thunder. It is the fourth Thor movie following the hugely successful Thor Ragnarok. Thor Love and Thunder satisfies our need for nostalgia with 80s-inspired love adventures with screaming goats, hairband music, Norse gods, and, of course, Natalie Portman returning this time as Mighty Thor. And the movie theater I was at applauded as soon as they saw her, so that was pretty cool. So, they all unite together, and they try to stop Gore, the god butcher, from eliminating all gods. So, Mark, I want to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this movie is inspired by the 80s, and in my opinion, the 80s was all about going big. Right? It's about like big hair, big shoulder pads. And say we went to the exact same place,
okay,
right?
Yeah,
and
a
big sound in music.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I want to know what you think in Thor: Love and Thunder. What was the biggest moment? What was the biggest kind of metal moment?
The biggest metal.
Yeah,
moment.
I want to know the biggest metal moment in Thor: Love and Thunder. What do you think?
Oh, okay.
I got mine, but I want to see what you say.
Of course you have yours.
Of
You knew
course.
you were
I
asking the
asked
dang question.
question.
For me, and I can't remember what song might have been playing, but when Thor is saving the church, the glass church area, and he gets up and he has the axe and he throws it and he goes after him, and it's just this big fight scene. They're playing heavy metal behind it. And then after it looks like he's saved them all, and he's like minimal destruction in the background, the whole cathedral just crashes all the way in. That felt like a big metal moment, lots of crashing and noise. And so I'm gonna go with that.
I love that. And then this was like their sacred temple, and they're like, we don't want to talk about that. Right. We don't want to talk about that. Here's my favorite.
All right.
My favorite was when Thor took Zeus's lightning bolt and threw the lightning bolt through the heart of Zeus and got Zeus. That was a pretty metal moment.
That was pretty
big, right?
I'll give you that.
I don't know that there's any metal music, but it felt to me like
there should have been if there was.
There should have been.
There absolutely should have been.
It was a metal moment. So I have another question for you.
Okay, all right.
Okay, you ready?
I thought we were saying you make me look stupid till the end.
No, I always try, and I never succeed. You always ended up making me look stupid.
All right, go ahead.
But okay.
I'm gonna take a drink first.
This is something that, of course, was on my mind the whole time. I loved Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies, probably of all time. I loved it. But here's my question. Do you think Thor Love and Thunder lived up to Thor Ragnarok? What do you think it was a worthy successor?
Okay, so
what do you think?
So here's the thing. There is actually, for those who aren't Marvel freaks like we are, there's this big argument going on about whether or not this new movie is worth watching, because Thor Ragnarok was kind of like the perfect Thor movie.
It was great.
It was amazing.
It was fun, a lot of adventure. Yeah.
Here's the thing. I happen to know that Waititi, who is the director, was very intentionally not trying to remake Ragnarok.
Right.
So I think it was a very good follow-up in that Ragnarok was just kind of a fun romp, and it was just kind of, there's lots of jokes and lots of incredible visuals. But let's be honest, the storyline wasn't particularly complicated, and there wasn't a lot of deep theological or statements being made.
Nope.
I think in this movie, he keeps the humor, he keeps the bright, brilliant colors that we kind of get from a couple of different recent Marvel movies. But there's so much going on. I mean, it's essentially hard to believe this is a superhero movie that's actually a rom-com.
Yes.
I mean, it's a rom-com / horror movie, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
Who knew that was even possible?
I know. It seems perfect, right? Who wouldn't make that movie?
Why hasn't it been made before?
But I do think there was some really interesting thing going on that we didn't see in the earlier ones. In particular, both with Mjolnir, which is Thor's hammer, and then, what's his name? The Necro Sword, which turned the main bad guy, Gore, the God Killer.
Yeah.
Both of those had these implications about what gods are and what gods aren't, and how do they matter, and how to respond when there's a god that's seemingly uncaring about what's happening in the world. So I felt like he took all the kind of best entertaining parts of Ragnarok, and then he pulled those in to keep us engaged, but then he told a much more complex story that has some real, I think, strong theological implications that could lead to questions that we live in for a while thinking about. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun, and I agreed. I've been following the conversations. Is it worth doing or not? But it was fun. It was fun to watch, and I think it was making a lot of powerful theological statements.
Right.
Which I know we're going to talk about here in a couple of minutes. But I love the fact that it was centered around the whole idea of death and an afterlife, and how that was kind of the framing theological question, which is something you don't necessarily expect from a Marvel movie,
superhero movie,
right? Yeah, you don't go in expecting to hear these existential questions explored in any meaningful way.
Right.
But we really did.
I think we did, and a matter of fact, I think if you go back and watch it the second time, you're going to find more levels of questions that are coming up about what good are gods and what's a good God compared to what's not a good God. And we'll get to some of that in our next segment. But I thought that part was all really, really interesting. How did you think they did? Because there really were. There were several. I mean, it was a comedy. It was a rom-com. It was a horror movie. It was a movie about all the gods.
Yes.
How did you think that went in terms of coming in and out of them? Because I've heard a lot of complaints. It feels like it's all over the place.
I know. I kind of liked it, and I think if you're two levels of nerd, this was a particularly enjoyable film, right? So like if you're a theology nerd and you're like a comic book nerd, it's great because you get to delve into like Greek mythology and other ancient Near East mythology. And you get to dig into like deeper superhero lore. And so in that case, for me, it was a really enjoyable movie because you got to really geek out. And so I thought, I wonder if everyone else in the theater is enjoying this as much as I am. But I was sure enjoying it.
I was too. I know I have the same thought. I only have as many people who are out there complaining. I actually only have one complaint about the movie. Here's my complaint. One of the great things that Marvel's is doing right now is that they're not all the superheroes aren't any longer old white men. Right. Right? Like
we talked about
coming from two white men on the podcast. Like, oh, isn't they great? They're not all white men. Thank God they don't look like us anymore. Like I look like a superhero or something. That's not true. But here's the part that this is the part that actually bothered me a little bit. So we get new Thor, right?
Yep.
We get Mighty Thor.
Yes.
Natalie Portman.
Yes.
What do you think about the fact that at the end of the movie, after we get this incredible new character, she dies? I mean, it was like, what are they doing? Like through the whole movie, you're like, this is fantastic. She's even showing the original Thor up in some of the battles and stuff. It's incredible. And Mjolnir, his hammer actually favors her, which is fantastic. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
And then
he gets his hammer back.
Yeah,
and she dies.
Because she dies, so he gets the hammer back. But,
I
mean, and it's not in battle either.
That's right. But she still ends up in Valhalla, right?
We're going to have to talk about that, I imagine.
Yes, of course we will. Yeah. So, it was kind of a bummer.
That would be my big complaint.
Yeah, it was kind of a bummer. You
could have done a lot better with. Well, we'll talk about that. Maybe they are going to do better.
Maybe they are. I think they are. Yeah.
We'll see.
So let's drop. But before we do, has anyone finished their cocktail? Has anyone finished their cocktail? You have. Okay, you get a shirt. You kind of raise your hand. You get a shirt.
Yeah.
You get a shirt. Okay, come pick out your size.
Pick out whatever size you want right there.
Now, how about this?
They're stacked, I think, from small to larger.
I didn't empty it.
Oh,
but you came close.
Yeah, that's okay. We value honesty,
Anyone else is going to make this drink when they get home? Anybody going to actually try to make this drink?
You too.
I saw your hand come up. Come grab yourself a shirt.
You get shirts too.
Absolutely. There'll be more to be given away later. Come on up, grab a shirt. This is all we have, though, so just know that when we get to the end, this is where we're going. But
you don't have size W.
The ratios are
they're
6-part cranberry,
size W for weird.
4-part vodka, 3 parts lager, 6-4-3 with cranberry, vodka, lager. So that's the mixture. I don't know. These particular ones are 12 ounces of 12 ounces of cranberry, 8 ounces of vodka. Actually, I think it's a little bit more than that. So it won't kill you to drink the whole thing, but you'll feel great after you do, which is really the bigger part. Which is kind of the
goal.
It's the theme of this show is to have a good time while we actually do some theology. And I promise you, we're about to do theology.
Let's do it. Let's listen to the drop, and you all can pick out your shirts as we're listening to the music, and we start the next segment.
Hit it, sir.
Right. Moonshine Jesus, light in the sky. Moonshine Jesus, light in the dark. Moonshine Jesus, purple light. Moonshine Jesus, shine light.
Woo!
Okay, we are heading into our what we call our theo-political segment, a Politico segment of our show. Sometimes we go very heavy politics, sometimes we go very heavy theology. I think you've already heard from what we've been watching in the show that we're probably going to lean pretty heavy theology
I think
here.
so. That was my thought.
So I want to start with, one of the main scenes is there's this giant scene where they go to this place where all the gods hang out. And I mean all the gods, including the god of Baal.
Yeah, that's right. All of them. From
All of them.
All the planets.
From Zeus to the little bitty god of Baal. And they're all there. So, and I'm going to talk about Zeus, though. First of all, I think we learned, one, for real, never meet your heroes, because that did not work out for Thor at all.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about a particular quote. The quote where Zeus says, if you don't shut up, you won't get invited to the orgy. I think that's the wrong quote. It's not, you won't get invited to the orgy. That's a different quote. Here's the quote that I actually... He did say that. He did say that.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that's really the one I meant to go with. So here's the one I meant to go with. Zeus, in this very rare, serious moment, Zeus says this. It used to be that being a god, it meant something. People would whisper your name before sharing their deepest hopes and dreams. They begged for your mercy without ever knowing if you were actually listening. Yeah. Now, when they look to the sky, they don't ask us for lightning. They don't ask us for rain. They just want to see one of their so-called superheroes. When did we become the joke? So here's my question. We've got all of these gods, right?
Yep.
And here they are being sort of self-reflective. You got to realize this movie opens up with a man in the desert cradling his daughter,
right,
and praying to his God.
Yeah.
And even the daughter is drawing pictures of the god on the one rock that's in the middle of the desert.
Very good.
And the whole course of the movie is set off because he's been praying to the god, and the daughter dies.
Yeah.
And so this question from Zeus, who's really a comic relief character, becomes really interesting when you put it into a more modern context in terms of, we're in this space where, at least in the past many, many decades, we're beginning to have to come up with more and different understandings of the providence of God. So my question to you is, how do you think his statement about when did we become the joke relates to our ever-changing and hopefully growing understanding of the providence of God?
Yeah, I think that we tend in American culture to view Jesus in particular as a superhero, right? A lot of churches theme Vacation Bible School around Jesus as a superhero.
One of the last Superman movies literally had frequently Superman in space
in
a full cross position. And so it's clear that even in our pop culture, there is this need somehow to associate Superman and Jesus together. Even though you look at the biblical text, there's really not a lot of support for that, right?
There's not a lot of support, and especially if you take a socio-historical context,
right.
You understand what Jesus was actually doing, and it wasn't about miracles, right? It was about creating inclusive community and breaking down walls. And so I think that the American need to see Jesus as a superhero is particularly interesting.
Absolutely.
And so I think that we have dumbed down the real message, right? Whenever we made it about something supernatural, about powers, that we have dumbed down our responsibility in creating the kingdom of God, in creating this world where we're treating each other justly and kindly, and we're working for this peaceful kingdom that Jesus spent his whole ministry talking about. And so I think we've seen that reflection in the way that we relate to God in general as well, right? Because we're thinking about God as like this supernatural deity that we need to please, that somehow has the power to grant our wishes. This old guy in the sky who's going to...
It's the great vending machine in the sky. You pump the prayers in, and the gifts come out, right? Which, there was a time, particularly in mainline Christianity, that was what the majority of folks understood.
Yeah.
The sad part maybe not the sad part. The real part is reality never really seemed to match up to that.
It never did. And I love that quote of yours, Mark. That's
not
best.
my quote. Does anyone remember who first coined that term, the great vending machine in the sky? It may have been Ennis. I can't remember. Someone, and it stuck with me forever, which is really, and it's sort of part of what Zeus is talking about in the quote I gave, is that, that we don't anymore throw up these, please bring rain, please. Partly, I hope it's because our theology is progressing. We're beginning to understand the providence of God a little bit better and how God may actually interact in our world and in human lives, and doesn't necessarily pick and choose who gets the good life and who gets the bad life.
Yeah, I think that's important, and especially since our societies have evolved in such a way that it's not just about like sustaining life, but it's about like granting those wishes and getting those vending machine things. And so one of the other things I think was very prominent, Mark, in this was the whole idea of the afterlife. It seemed like the whole show was about exploring this idea of an afterlife, what it's going to be like. What was your take on that? What did you think about it?
I really kind of like the fact this has been a recent theme in Marvel movies where we're having lots of afterlives. We see it in Black Panther. We see it in Moon Knight. And in Moon Knight, I can't remember the name of the goddess, but the hippopotamus goddess basically says, look, all beliefs have their own afterlife that's based on the plane that they live on and what they think of it. The interesting thing to me about the themes that run through the Marvel ones is people can go into it and come back from it. Black Panther does it. We see Moon Knight do it. And when we get to our question segment, maybe we'll talk a little bit. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that.
Mighty Thor?
So I thought it was really interesting. I love that they investigate it and give some hope for it. Although I do think, honestly, folks, I think progressive Christianity, this is one of the places where we're falling short. In terms of understanding the afterlife, what we're really good at is dismissing hell and any golden paved streets of heaven, which is fine. Biblically, that makes a lot of sense. What we're not doing a very good job at, and part of that's because we do love the questions. We love living the questions and trying to.
Yes.
But this is such an important issue for folks at different points in their life to understand or have some idea what afterlife is like. We don't do a very good job of positing what it might be and what the experience is. It all ended? Is your energy going somewhere else? And I can tell you, for folks who are going through loss and tragedy, who have been particularly recently introduced to progressive Christianity and are trying to figure out who we are within that, there is a big gap of I was literally told just a few weeks ago, there was comfort in knowing that my husband was going to be there waiting for me, whatever form that looked in. And progressive Christianity is playing kind of a fence game with what we really think or really isn't. I think that might be part of the new future of what progressive Christianity needs to re-emphasize and start working on. We need a lot of our larger thinkers beginning to consider that and putting something out there that we can hold on to a little more tightly. There's lots of pieces out there, but there's something about it that needs to be hopeful. And I think that we see that call for hopefulness in this movie. Gore the God Butcher, who's the man who's walking across the desert with his daughter. She dies. He's been praying to his God. His God doesn't show up. He kills his God and gets this sword that causes him to want to kill all the gods. But part of it is that he's living in grief. He asked this God to do something for me. And then this God turns out to not care at all.
Not at all.
And so from that point on, we have this guy that is set up as as Christian Bale, who does
he's phenomenal.
Holy moly, amazing. One of the scariest Marvel villains I've seen in a long time. But he's also this weirdly sympathetic.
He is.
Because his need to kill the gods are, I called out to you. And you let her die.
His guts were mocking
what
him.
are you worth? I'm coming after you. And so he's really a bad guy who's living out of grief. This is a grief response. And nothing's really provided to him to help him get past that grief response. I tell you what, I cannot tell you how appropriate it is in the middle of our show that the truck that cleans out the toiletries is driving by right in the middle. Like, it feels like the perfect commentary It really feels like the private commentary on who we are.
I love it.
But I really do think that this show begs that question: is what makes a good God? Because he assumes because no God saved his daughter, all gods are bad and deserve to die.
Yeah.
And I actually think the overarching umbrella of this show is to kind of investigate what makes a God good.
I think you're right. I think that's very interesting because, the God of Christian Bale's character, says your point in life is suffering. And how many Christians view their life as that, as something to suffer through and get through to the end? And so as I was watching this, I kept thinking about Marcus Borg's quote that probably many of you know, where he said, "Is there an afterlife? And if so, what will it be like? I don't have a clue, but I'm confident that the one who has buoyed us up in life will buoy us up in death." Yeah. And so I love that quote because I was thinking exactly what you were thinking, Mark, that, we need to lean into this. And this is one of the most often question that I get as a pastor is like, well, what waits beyond us? And, how is that going to be like? And then, so I think leaning into that is something that, people are interested in exploring.
There's a lot of interesting things that are going on with science in terms of parallel energy and we'll call them universes or realities that I think that if we, since progressive Christianity is very open to understanding what science is, there's a lot to learn from that I think we could be living more strongly into. But ultimately, the thing I love about this movie, and I use the word love specifically, is that I think, and you tell me if you believe it, the ultimate answer is what makes a God matter is love.
Absolutely. I mean, Jesus over and over again says that God is love. So in San Diego, where I live, we're celebrating Pride Weekend this weekend. And I said over and over again to them that God is love. And the way that God makes God's love known is by the way that we love one another. And so that when we go and love each other in the world, that we are making God's love manifest in the world. And so I think love is what it's all about. And I think Jesus gives us that criterion of love. And so if we're not living our lives in a way that passes a criterion of love, we're not living authentic lives. And I think if we're like reading the Bible in ways that don't pass the criterion of love, then we're not reading the Bible in an authentic way.
Absolutely.
And so I think that love is what it's all about.
And that's what we really ultimately end up finding is that the hero, not just the gods, but the heroes that matter are the ones that actually exhibit some form of love. So we're about to head into our Make Me Look Stupid segment where you get to try to make us look stupid.
And you will.
And you will. It'll be easy, so don't feel any real pressure.
Right.
Just do keep it about anything you've heard today or the theology that we're talking about today. Reminder, there are a couple of more mixed drinks. There is beer over there and some koozies if you would like to put that in there. And as we go through this, as you ask a question, as soon as your question's been answered, feel free to come up and see if your size is left and grab yourself a T-shirt.
Absolutely.
Okay. We'll turn the mic around for the questions. Awesome. All right, and you're going to come up and ask your question, and then you can get your shirt while you're up here. We can share a microphone here. And so we're going to take a quick drop with some music, and we'll be back on the other side of the break.
All right. Mustang. I've been drinking a little bit. Shine your light.
Thank you, Big Bob.
Yeah, so as Mark mentioned, we usually do this Make Me Look Stupid section, and you are going to make us look stupid, and it looks like we have our first contender to make us look stupid.
I love that someone's already so eager to make us look
They
stupid.
know we're going to do
Fantastic.
Yeah,
well, you mentioned something about in Marvel how they people are going in and out of the afterlife. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so in Christian theology, we have death and resurrection. So is resurrection then a similar thing where we are coming out of the afterlife?
I think that this is a great question, and I think the way that it applies to the Marvel Universe and their afterlife is very intriguing because we do. So we have folks that go into the afterlife and remain there. The people that are dead, really dead. But we also have these folks who go into the afterlife and experience something of enlightenment. And afterlife has sort of its own version of what enlightenment looks like. It might be having a moment to talk with your ancestors and hear their perspectives on everything. It might be just a sharper view of the present. But there's lots of different views, but there is this enlightenment that happens. And then the folks do come back, and almost always. So it's their own little personal resurrection. And in a lot of ways, they're a very different person as they come back, and a better person, which is pretty hopeful in the long run that maybe this afterlife and whatever it is and what we end up being there and seeing there, we advance even more as we learn from it. I mean, what do you think? I think it's a great question.
Absolutely. And, I think that as Christians in the 21st century, this is something that we really need to wrestle with. And I think that folks who are struggling with this question also find a certain liberation and honesty in saying that, you know what, we don't know what happens when we die. It may not be the golden streets that that people have talked about in theology, or that we see in Valhalla in the Marvel movies. But you know what, that we want to know what happens with us when we die, and I think there's a certain freedom in saying, you know what, no one has any idea, and if people tell you that they know exactly what happens, don't believe them. That's right, run away, because nobody knows. And so I had a conversation with someone about this recently who was invoking the right to die in California. That's something that we can do. And so someone who was really struggling with their life and, saying, I don't have any quality of life and I want to invoke my right to die. And is that sinful? And, I sat with her and heard her story and said, you don't need to feel bad about this. Our God is a loving God who we know through our loving relationships in our lives. And our God wants us to live happy and productive lives. And if your life is not like that, there is no shame, there is no sinfulness in saying that, you know what, I can't live anymore. And I think that, us being able to embrace this mystery, too, to say that we don't know what's going on after we die, but we know that our God is a God who has promised to never abandon us, no matter what it is we're going through in our lives, is particularly important.
And I think, yes, to embrace the mystery, but I do still think that progressive Christianity, in a lot of ways, compared to like mainline theology and everything, is fairly young and fairly new, and I do think we still need to investigate that a lot more deeply, in much the same ways we do other pieces where we do bring in science, where we do look deeper into the original text of the Bible and begin to have at least something to offer that's a little more hopeful than the mystery. Like, I think we need to have the mystery. We need to recognize it, understand it, and be able to live into it. But I think it's also helpful to have at least some options that here are what some of the things that we're currently learning that might help us understand a little more clearly whatever is next might look like.
That's a fair criticism, Mark, and I love the fact that you mentioned what we're learning from the science, right? Because we've recently seen these incredible images from the Webb telescope, right? And so we know that that wonderful Carl Sagan quote, right? That we are stardust, right? Stardust we shall. And right, and to stardust we shall return, right? So we don't know exactly what happens, but we do know that we live on, that like the molecules within us become what is next. And I think that's incredible to embrace as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any more? Let's have a few more questions from the audience. Does anybody have something they're thinking of? I don't want to have to answer his questions. Like, I'd rather.
Have some.
I know.
Of course I do.
I've got questions too. So please come forward.
Yeah.
You answer first this time.
Okay. Fair enough.
So I'm not sure I have a total handle on what this question is, but
yeah.
I've only seen one Marvel movie, Black Panther, but I was struck by sort of a Manichaean kind of sensibility there, right? There's good guys, there's bad guys, right? The bad guys are really bad, the good guys are really good. How does that? It doesn't feel like Christian theology identifies those two sets of characters. like who are the villains?
Uh-huh.
Like I don't see the villains necessarily. Like I mean, obviously Pontius Pilate and stuff, but
Right.
but it doesn't seem the same way, right? It seems like there's like sort of good and evil fighting thing that goes, and that's like part of Norse mythology, as I understand it as well. But Christianity, I think, wants to redeem who the villain is rather than destroy them.
Yeah.
How do you understand that theologically?
Yeah. Absolutely. And Mark gave me the microphone, and then he has an answer.
Well, I was like, if you don't want this, I can at least start in looking into this. So I actually think it's interesting. I love this question because I feel like Marvel's progressing. Because right up until that movie, and I think you nailed it. It's very much good, bad, and there's not a lot of in between there. It's kind of one of the things I love about Thor, Love and Thunder, is that even the bad guy is actually redeemable. At the end of the movie, when it's revealed to him that his daughter can be saved, and that there's folks who actually feel love towards him, regardless of the fact that he's been out here in all the universes killing all the gods, where he is completely redeemable. And it's a character, like I said, is a fairly sympathetic character, because we know while he's out here being this horrific person in terms of how most of the world's going to be looking at him, he's doing it out of this deep sense of grief and a sense of, I've been told the world has dictated to me that gods care about us and respond to us, and so I have this expectation of my God that they didn't live up to. And so he's a very sympathetic villain, like very sympathetic. He's scary as crap too. I mean, just Christian Bale is just amazing. But he ends up being a fully redeemed villain. At the end of it, he gives over essentially to love. And the idea that I can make sure I can extend my love, which was, the relationship between grief and love is a very strongly knit relationship. I mean, there's no grief if there's no love to start with in general. And so I really love that I tell you what, as if once wasn't enough, another sanitation cleanup, just in case y'all didn't get the commentary about having the porta potty cleanup come by, we're gonna do it again. So that's kind of my thought. I think it's a great observation.
Good shit.
It's good shit.
He said what they're really saying is good shit, and I kind of like that. I like that. Hey, speaking of redemption, thank you for redeeming.
That's a good motto for a show, isn't it? Good shit.
This is some good shit. Maybe we need to rebrand.
Maybe we do. I love that thought too about.
Give us bottles of good shit.
Right.
We give bottles of good shit. We try to provide good shit.
Sort of moonshine,
That's right. I love it. We do our best. You've got a question.
I got a question.
Okay, as you're coming up, let me just say, I love that thought of Christian theology, and I love that thought about Christian Bale as a redeemable character, because you're right, Mark, that he is 100% relatable, right? The God lets his daughter die and says, what's your point but suffering? What is your point but suffering? Right. What's
God tells him after his daughter just died.
Right, after his daughter just dies.
Why didn't you save us? And he's like,
What's the point of...
living if it's not
If it's not suffering,
suffering?
right? Which is Christian theology, American Christian theology, conservative Christian theology, churchianity. What's the point of theology? That life is suffering, kind of thing. There is a bit of that. Yeah, and I think the point of Buddhism is to kind of let go, to acknowledge that life is suffering as a process of letting go of your attachment to what you're holding on to in this world. And I think Christian theology, though, is like hanging on to the idea that life is suffering because, Christians, original sin and the idea of atonement, that Jesus is dying for, for all of our sins. I think that's very harmful theology, that all of us are involved in suffering. And I really don't think that's the authentic message of Christianity. I think it's really about God loving us. So you've got a question, and I want to hear it.
More questions coming up.
Yeah.
I love that this question come up because I might have to. I get to avoid his question.
So far, you guys have
That's
not
right.
looked stupid
We're trying to
at
make
all.
each other. Yeah. Thank you.
I don't want
That's
to. I don't
kind.
want to complain, but
We'll try.
We might have looked stupid, not have looked stupid so far, but now everyone here is counting on you to take care of
Okay,
it.
I'm not after that, really. First of all, I think it's amazing that there is such a thing as a movie that takes on theodicy and really delves
Right?
into it.
Yeah.
You know, I can't think of another movie that has. The second question: how do you react to? I'm not a Twitter person.
Yeah.
I'm not a Marvel person. I'm too old to be a nerd. You know?
You're never too old to be a nerd.
I know. I'm nerdy about other things, but
Good.
Okay.
Just not Marvel.
however, how do you respond to the Thor can't be a chick, you know? You know, and then her death is a self-sacrificial moment. It's a cross
It is.
moment.
It's theological.
So
yeah.
talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this is something that we see in patriarchy across the United States, not just in like Christian churches, but we see it in patriarchy in the United States in general. That we want to say that, women can't do such and such, and I mean, we've seen this, of course, in recent Supreme Court decisions and even recent Supreme Court appointments, which has been tragic and terrible. But we continue to see this in churches as well, as people say that, women aren't able to do theology in the same way, which just isn't true. A lot of times women can do theology better than we can.
I think a lot of times.
Yeah.
I mean, let's look at it this way. Like his point of women can do theology better. So God is creator, right? When was the lifetime a man actually had a heavy involvement in being a creator of life? I mean, there is some involvement, but it's not. So it'd be absolutely ridiculous to not think that a woman's life would not lend some insight into God that a man could never completely get to, right?
That's right, absolutely. And so, as I mentioned earlier in the show, like this Sunday is Pride in San Diego, and so one of the comments I made to the congregation is that God is gay, God is lesbian, God is bi, God is trans, God is cis, God is straight, God is all of those things, because each and every one of us is created in the divine image, including women, right? That women are created in the divine image, and so anytime that we proclaim something other than that, we are speaking heresy. And so it's incredible that churches speak this over and over again. I mean, churches who are, declaring that women are not worthy are actually being heretical. And that's terrible.
Yeah, I think we have another question, this time from our host. So this is fantastic. All right. And I need to say, I think Caleb nailed that question. So now it's all resting on you to make us look stupid.
Wow, I should have had my wife come up and do that.
You're probably right.
First statement to remember, the Princess Bride.
Yes.
Life is suffering. Anyone who tells you different is selling something.
It's selling something.
So the question is, in my tradition, the corollary with redemption is forgiveness.
Yes.
And that is, they go together, that there's no redemption without the forgiveness. And we spend, and I think in all of our traditions, a good deal of our life seeking the forgiveness of God. Gore the God Slayer has the opportunity to forgive the gods, but doesn't.
Yes.
So the question is, in our theology, we know that we want God to forgive us, but is there a place for us to forgive God?
That's a great question. Great question. In our theology, is there a place for us to forgive God? So here's I'm going to cheat on this a little bit, and here's why. The only reason we need to be able to forgive God is that we've bought into false ideas about God. So I don't think that we need to be able to forgive God, because my understanding of who God is, of this love, of this connective energy that's in each of us, it's in everything, it connects us all, that is in every moment. That thing, if we understand it and access it, really doesn't need forgiveness, because it's pure love. It's pure love. What we have to learn to do is forgive our previous understandings of God, so that we can advance in our relationship with God.
We have to give you t-shirts now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what to do except snap for Mark, right? Like that's the answer, right? God is love, and if we're viewing God in a way that is different than that, we're having an authentic view of God. And so I'm with you, Mark. I think you're 100% right. So you've got one more question.
No, not
Last
a question. I just maybe we have to forgive those who taught us that previous understanding of God.
Now that's good. No, that's good because the church does a ton of harmful theology. The church does a lot of theology that teaches us that we ought to be hating others, right? Not only not accepting others, but really hating others. And a lot of the forgiveness that we need is towards those who have preceded us in the church that have taught us that we need to do that kind of love. And so I do think that, and I think Mark and I have talked about forgiveness quite a bit, and we agree that the main point of forgiveness is that if we don't forgive, if we hold on to anger and resentment, that it hurts us. It doesn't hurt anyone else but us. And so the main point when Jesus is talking about forgiveness, he's talking about letting our own spirits free and our own spirits flourish. And so I think that one of the main reasons that we need to forgive is so that we can flourish as human beings.
And I completely agree. I think it was beautifully put. We're going to have time for one more question. We're going to try to answer it quickly because we've twice promised our podcast listeners about another questions that we have to get to. It's just one more after yours. But please ask your question.
It's not complete unless you feel stupid.
That's right. We've got to feel stupid. And did you notice Mark handed me the microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah. And stupid Caleb. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to try to help both of you.
Excellent.
Okay.
I
good.
like this idea of the forgiveness of God. And the great psychologist Carl Jung wrote Answer to Job, in which he suggests any father, divine father, that would sacrifice his child has not evolved completely on the line of unconditional love.
Yeah.
And part of his solution, I wonder what you think about this, is that as human beings, part of our job is to help God become more conscious.
Oh, I love that question, and I love that thought from Carl Jung that it's not just God's responsibility; that it is our responsibility as well. And so I think that's 100% true. That if we agree that it is on us to help create this kingdom of God, that it is not just all on God. And so that's what a lot of conservative Christians would have you believe, that it is all on God to create this wonderful utopia. But it's not, right? It's on us to help.
Jesus' teaching pretty much told us that, right?
He did. Yeah, Jesus' teaching 100% told us that we are called to love our neighbor and that we are called to treat each other with respect and hospitality and compassion and love in the here and now. And so the only way that God can ever accomplish that kingdom of God is if we get to work in the world creating that love and hospitality and compassion and love. So do you have a thought on that as well?
I think you did a fantastic job answering that. Thanks for trying to make us look stupid. That was the closest you came as close. Like if it wasn't for Caleb, I'd be sitting up here looking stupid right now. I'd be like, oh, that's a damn good question. I don't know. All right. So the one question, Caleb, that I turn back to you because we've promised our listeners this twice already is, and it's kind of a couple of part questions. So I'm going to ask you to try to be focused because I know. Well, it gives me a second chance to make you look stupid, and I love that. So. How did Jane end up in Valhalla? And then I'm going to come back with because one, she's not Asgardian, and two, she didn't die in battle.
Yeah. Okay, so this is my favorite quote in the movie, I think, because it speaks volumes on Christian theology, right? Thor says, "Hey, you're all Asgardian children. You're all going to end up in Valhalla," and they all come forward and they're like, "We're not Asgard. Yeah, I'm not Asgard." Right. And so they're not going to end up in Valhalla. And even for the ones who are, it's not a particularly comforting thought, right? And this is a metaphor for Christianity who says over and over again that you are going to end up in heaven. don't worry about anything. You're going to end up in heaven. And I think that this is terrible theology, right? And so I think the way that Jane ends up in Valhalla, in the movie at least, is that she does sacrifice her life for the universe. Right. Okay. You've got to come back to this.
No, I think you're right. She sacrifices herself for the universe. She sacrifices herself for this child. But listen.
Okay. Tell me.
Thor.
Yeah.
In I don't remember if it was Ragnarok or the one before.
Yeah.
Says that you go to Valhalla when you've lived your life for a glorious cause. Yeah. And I kind of feel like that's why she ends up in Valhalla. But I also feel like, and this is the redeemable part of her storyline for me, because I did hate that they killed off this incredible female hero. Yeah. I think what we're going to see, because of how she ends up there, is that probably Odin or someone is going to create a Valkyrie out of her, and that we're going to see her become the mighty Thor, and we're probably going to get a lot more from her, which I think is incredible. And that redemption story for me is one of the themes of any good theology, is that redemption is always available. Even when we feel like there is an ending, there's the opportunity for new beginnings.
I love that, and that's incredibly theological. Thank you, Mark. That's wonderful. And thank you to all of you for being with us today. And thanks to all of you who completed your Hammer of Thor. I hope that all of you will come up after the show and grab a shirt if you don't have one already. We'd love to have you here. Yes.
Finish your drink with me.
Finish your drink. I've already finished mine, but thank you, Mark. Yes.
Do it, sir. Do it. Moonshine Jesus, light in the sky. Moonshine Jesus, never arrive. Moonshine Jesus, best of the light. Moonshine Jesus, shine your light. It's the Moonshine Jesus show.
Woo! Thank you all.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Check us out on Facebook and anywhere you get your podcast, Moonshine Jesus Show. There's more beer, there's more koozies, there's more drinks. Come and enjoy any part that you like.
Moonshine